Call of Duty fans, welcome back. I'm IHOLDSHIFT, giving you the Call of Duty League recap from day number 1 of the CDL Dallas homestand. It was an interesting one for many reasons. First of all, this was our first venture towards online COD in what feels like almost forever for a lot of us. Production moved online, dedicated servers supposed to be set up, everything was supposed to go smoothly, and it was a little bit less than smooth, I think, throughout most of the day, but a lot of the hiccups seem to be being resolved relatively quickly. So what did that mean in terms of our opening games from our first rounds today? Well, candidly, it was, again, not good for some teams. Let's start things off, remind you of what the groups looked like, starting with Group A. Florida played Toronto first. Now, in a lot of people's minds, this Florida squad should be better than this Toronto squad, and I tended to agree during our recap yesterday. The one thing you got to keep in mind, though, is that this Toronto team is actually a good search and destroy squad. So through our first 3 maps, everything turned up just as pretty much we expected it. Metals did play for Looney, which did not end up going all that well for the first map for Toronto, as they would lose this one relatively easy 250-122 on Ramaza for the hard point. But then we got to the Gunrunner, and again, after the stomping that Toronto faced after the hard point, you wondered, could they find a way to recoup themselves and get back into the mix? The answer was definitively yes, because again, Toronto's S&D has been good, but they came out and smoked Florida 6-0 on the Gunrunner search and destroy. We would stay on Gunrunner for the Dom. Florida would have a nasty AC hold. It was so good. It was so good. And I'll go back and do a breakdown of that at some point next week. And then from there on out, they were able to capture a home flag and take the edge 174-156. Then things got interesting. Hackney Yard Hardpoint up next for map number 4, a map that Florida has been traditionally pretty damn good at, and Toronto not so much. And on top of that, Havoc would start off with 10 kills through the first 2 points. However, Toronto did a much better job manipulating the middle of the map when it went from P3 to 4 to 5. And with that, they took a narrow edge 250-230 as they could just play for the win off of the third rotation's first hill. Ramaza would be our final 5th map. It would be search and destroy, and well, it would be Toronto's best mode showcased once again. Metals played very well. Cammy was consistent as hell throughout the entirety of the day. Florida could not keep up with it. 6-3 Toronto, and they supersede Florida 3-2, and they move on surprisingly, I think, for a lot of people to the second round, and in my case, ruined a number of my bets. Thanks a bunch, Toronto. But no, good for Cammy and the rest of the squad. They did look much better throughout the back half of that set than they did in the first map, that's for sure. But going into the second match of this Group A, it was Dallas versus the LA Guerrillas. Now, this one should not have been close on a lot of people's minds. Dallas has been looking very, very good. LAG had just come off of making changes on their roster, and we had learned that they made a couple of moves in their roles. Blast would be playing the main AR, Aqua would be moving to more of a flex style, and it looked like it was going to be turning out just okay for LAG, as Blast looked really solid. Him and Aqua combined for a pretty convincing start. Aqua was 13-7 after the first couple of hills, and LAG kept up and kept testing Dallas throughout all of these money hills, P2, P5 of Gunrunner, and they would keep a narrow lead, but they would crumble in this second rotation. Dallas would win 250-169. Going to Arklov Peak. Well, Los Angeles Guerrillas just kept finding first bloods, and they said, all right, that's our go call. We'll just go. Dallas could not keep up with it. 6-3 LAG in surprising fashion on Arklov. Then we go to Hackney Yard for the domination. The game was looking very unstable. A lot of lagging, a lot of freezing. People couldn't put down any kind of utility. It was awkward, to say the least. One member from LAG left. The second one would follow. And apparently, because of the rule set, Los Angeles Guerrillas would forfeit the map, because if someone has a connection problem, you cannot just simply leave. The rules state that you have to play the game all the way out in whatever the abbreviated form is. And then if there was to be a restart or a replay, the refs would deem it whether they would do that or not. Not like it would have mattered. Dallas was up about 2 times the points as we got around the first halftime. So with that, it would still read as a forfeit. I'm not going to keep it as a score in my averages and things of that nature, but I will credit the map win to Dallas, because again, they were up pretty convincingly. It would have been really difficult, I think, for LAG to come back. But then we would get map number 4, Hackney Yard, for the hard point. LAG would really, again, like in map number 1, put the pressure on Dallas, have a really steep lead after the first rotation, and they had control of P2 the second time around. But as we get to the 5th hard point, Illy found a necessary 1v3 to open up spawns on the backside of P5. right in the nick of time. Dallas was able to contest and take the map 250-244 in break and comeback fashion. Insane series. A little bit of a weirdness there because simply due to the fact that there was the forfeited map, but Dallas did look like the better team. However, as you look at the bottom side of the bracket here, LAG versus Florida coming up next. I haven't looked at the betting lines yet, but if LAG has a very favorable betting line, I think you might take it. Florida did look good against Toronto, but not good enough to beat Toronto, especially in Search and Destroy, where LAG is also pretty solid at. So if the Florida Mutineers are playing up against a better respawn team in LAG, and they play Search and Destroy better, it's very possible LAG gets their second win of the season against the Florida Mutineers in surprise fashion. I've actually got that one potentially based on the map pool, going map 5 and LAG taking it. So we'll see how that all determines. Besides that, though, Dallas plays Toronto. I wouldn't even bother with this one. It's going to be a 3-0 for Dallas. Cammy played well. I'm not going to lie. Metals played pretty well all the way through. Methods, they all played okay, but they're not going to play at the same stage as Dallas. Illy and Shotzi looked great. That's going to be a 3-0, no problem. Let's go over to Group B, though, and break this one down again. Seattle would play Paris up first. This was another very good set, as it would go 5. It would start on Hackney Yard. Seattle had P2 first. They broke P5 in about 15 seconds, and from there on out, well, Seattle, they were running away with it. That would be a 251-71. Petro would be the Search and Destroy up next. Now remember, for the Seattle Surge, their biggest woe has been their Search and Destroy. Have they had a chance to fix things with Pander being more established in the mix? The answer? No. Not really at all. There was Kismet pulling off assassinations. They were getting 1v3s, and there were just way too many First Bloods for Seattle to ever fully overcome. However, this was actually our first game of the evening, and Slacked was tweeting out mid-map about how the server status was and how it was not very good. It was just a little bit of interesting controversy there if you're into that kind of thing. We get St. Petro for the domination, and Seattle did a pretty reasonable job of starting on the A side and getting some good capture of B. They didn't put as much influence in the C flag as I think they would have liked, but the good news was in the second half, they played a perfect C side. They'd take it 163-152. It was a very polite game of domination. It wasn't very chaotic like St. Petro can sometimes be. Both teams just kind of held their ground, fought over the middle map, and, well, Seattle turned up on top of that. We would then go into Azir Cave next, dead even through the first rotation of hills, but then Paris would hit some great timings on the rotations from 2 to 3. 31 and 19 for Kismet, even though Shocks finished like 10 and 21 or something like that. But they would close things out no problem. 251-64 would send us to another map 5. This one would go round 11. There were a couple of moments where you thought Seattle was going to be able to do it, but they weren't. They lose another Search and Destroy in 11 and lose the series 3-2. Then going to Chicago and Minnesota in what I am calling the most heartbreaking series in the CDL to date. Ramaza hardpoint up first. Chicago had a role swap going on. Was Formal would move to the SMG. RCDs would move to the main AR. Not too big of a swap because both of them were running ARs at different points in time. It just came down to the RCDs now being the lockdown anchor AR. Formal moving forward, able to use his SMG more liberally, and it worked out nicely. 7-2 for RCDs to start, 8-3 for Formal as they got through the first 2 hills. A great first rotation from Chicago. They had a very nice lead, but it would start to get dwindled down, chipped away at, and Minnesota would win P1 pretty convincingly near full time on the top bridge at Ramaza, as well as being able to break P2, leading to a lead swap. Minnesota would then take a gamble in what I'm calling one of the best commitment calls that I've seen from Minnesota so far this year. They give up P4 almost completely, knowing that they can't lose on it. They send a couple of members to put themselves on the hill just to make sure Chicago cannot rotate. They zone out the map, but unfortunately, they zoned a little bit too far, and the anchor who was furthest back towards what is the barbershop spawns would get killed. Chicago would spawn in, and Chicago would find a way to survive 252-39. Then to St. Petro for the Surge. Chicago's been great at Search and Destroy, but it didn't show early. 5-0 for Minnesota. He thought, damn, okay, Minnesota came to play. But wait, there is this player. His name is Dylan, also known as Envoy. He looked absolutely insane. Gets the ninja in the last round for the full sale. 6 rounds straight, 6-5 the score. Chicago sneaks it away, quite literally, off of Dylan's back on the Search and Destroy. Then we'd go to Gunrunner for the domination. Minnesota did a great job putting pressure on C early for Chicago, who then would in turn figure things out and would not really let that pressure exist for much longer. 150-143. Minnesota was in this series the entire way through. Unfortunately, though, they do still lose it at a 3-0 total. So they will play up against Seattle tomorrow, and Chicago will get Paris. Now, remember, last time Chicago played Paris, it went to 5. However, this is a different Chicago team. This is going to be a 3-1, maybe at best. I'm predicting it going 3-0. Paris had some moments, but they're not playing at the same speed, level, or consistency that Chicago is. And copy-paste that same conversation to Minnesota Rokkr versus the Seattle Surge. Minnesota takes this one 3-0. Seattle looks like a mess. The only place I could see Seattle really taking it is if they get a domination. They are pretty solid at respawn. Again, not bad, but their search has been pretty atrocious. So if this one doesn't end in 3, it'll end in probably 4. I've got Minnesota beating this one. Facing up against Paris tomorrow, which is, I guess, the conversation we didn't get to. I've got Minnesota playing Paris tomorrow. Minnesota takes that one, probably 3-1. And then I've got LAG playing Toronto. I've got LAG in that one, 3-1. So we'll get the recap for tomorrow after the games are all finished. Again, it is just the knockouts plus the qualifier rounds tomorrow. Sunday will be our championship day, as we'll get the full playoff, both semis and the finals. And beyond that, throughout the entire day tomorrow and Sunday, the Challengers scene will be playing through their 10K events through the APAC, EU, and NA. I will be doing a showcase recap. That'll be live probably Tuesday or something like that. I'll do a full recap Sunday night going into Monday of the CDL stuff. Maybe I'll do both in once. We'll do both at once. We'll have Challengers and we'll have CDL coming to you guys after everything happens on Sunday. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the content. If you like the video, like the video. If you want to see more content like this, make sure you guys subscribe on your way out. Until the next one, hope you guys keep holding it down. Later. Bye-bye.